Welcome to This Sacred Life. I'm Shan Vanderleek, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Registered Dietitian Nutritionist Tamar Samuels. Tamar's unique and holistic approach to healthcare integrates functional medicine, positive psychology, and behavioral change techniques pulled from her training in clinical nutrition and coaching science. Tamar has her master's in clinical nutrition from New York University and is a national board certified health and wellness coach. She is also the co-founder of Culina Health. Welcome to This Sacred Life, Tamar.
Hi, Shan. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. And before we got together this morning, I sat and pulled a goddess card for our conversation and just, as always, just started to crack up because Coventina, purification, rose to the top of the deck. And Coventina's entire message is that it's time for a cleansing detoxification of your mind, body, and soul. And I normally ask my guests, well, what do you think that's all about? And I just started to crack up because here we are. You're a nutritionist, for crying out loud. You're going to absolutely support this message.
I think the concept of cleansing is actually really controversial, especially in the nutrition space. And my approach to cleansing is probably a lot different than the messaging that we typically get out there. I think the messaging around cleansing is usually involves, cutting a bunch of food out and like revamping your entire life in a day. And I think when we think about cleansing, it's more important to really just get clear on like what your goals are, what's working for you, what isn't working for you, and then really think about, okay, like what do I want in order for me to be successful when it comes to my health, and like, how can we get there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'm glad that you said that because when I think of cleansing and detoxification, I think of, oh, how can I add more spring water to my day? How can I be more mindful of the kind of screen time I'm having or, what I'm letting into my mind? How can I move a little bit more today? Or, oh, I really went a little bit overboard this past weekend. What choices can I make to kind of move back on the path that I want to be on so that I don't stay in that space of over carb or too much fat or sugar or what have you?
Yeah, you really nailed it with that. I think much of what you said is focused more on adding stuff in instead of taking stuff out, right? And so I think
Right.
that is how people are so much more successful when it comes to their health, is really thinking about how can I add things in that are supportive to my health that make me feel good.
Yeah. And the more you do that, at least from my experience, the more I realize when I'm in a position where I could make a choice to put something in my body that I feel like, oh man, my mouth would really love that, but the rest of my body is not going to be really happy about that later. So, like, is it really worth it? And being more engaged, I guess, in the decisions that I'm making versus just filling a space or emotional eating or stress eating or any of those things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think food is very charged, and that's okay, right? When we think about food, we don't just think about food as fuel. It has so many different contexts in our lives. We think about, community and family. We think about sadness and stress.
What I'd like for you to do, if you would, Tamar, is walk me through the process of how a person realizes that it's time to partner with somebody like you and to really have a dialogue and make an investment and get to the core of how they can be a much healthier version of themselves.
Readiness and willingness to change is really, really important. And so I think, if you're going to be successful with any behavior change, it's really important for you to ask yourself if you feel ready. I talk to a lot of people about this, including my team of dietitians who are really struggling to support their patients who just aren't ready for change. Oftentimes, our clients are at a point in their lives where they are incredibly frustrated and overwhelmed with, the misinformation around nutrition, confused about what to eat, how to eat, when to eat. There's so much noise out there. and it can feel really overwhelming, and they try and experiment on their own, and it leads to maybe short-term success or no success at all. Yeah, there's this frustrating cycle of trying something and not working, or it working for a short period of time and then regressing back to where you were before, even, in a worse place than you were before. So that frustration, I think, really drives people to work with someone who can guide them and help them to understand their bodies, help them to understand their relationship with food. Really, someone who has a clinical perspective. They know about the human body, they have clinical experience, but they also are delivering personalized information. And that's what we do at Culina Health. So I think that that's sort of the mind state where people are at when they're
Mm-hmm.
ready to receive support. And then the question is, okay, are you ready to make the change? Because at the end of the day, you're going to be working a lot harder than I am, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
behavior change is really difficult.
Sure.
It certainly getting support makes it easier, but it takes more than just education for people to really make changes in their behaviors and their lifestyle. And so you have to be ready to and accepting of the fact that it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to be challenging. We're really here to support you on that path and truly understand how difficult it is to make changes. But I think nutrition isn't sexy,
Yeah,
right? Like I
yeah,
think
yeah.
the
Right.
perception of eating well and exercising, like I think if we kind of look at it on the surface level, it seems like, oh, this is very like sexy and attractive thing. But actually, it can be challenging, right? Like it can be challenging to make change. That's why it's so important to have like a partner, an ally that you trust to support you in that journey.
And so then how in your practice, if a person is ready to come see you and now they know this, they're ready to dive in and make the commitment to themselves, then how does it work? How do you integrate functional medicine with the psychology, with behavioral change? If I were coming into you for our first meeting, what would that look like?
If somebody were to work with me specifically, my goal is to really just collect data and really see where my clients are at from baseline. So, what does your typical food intake look like? What is your environment like? Your eating environment like? Are you sitting at your desk most of the time? Are you working from home? Do you commute? What is your relationship with food? Are you using food for emotional reasons? Are you restricting your intake? How does food operate in your life? What are your stress levels like? We utilize food in so many different contexts in our lives. And I think not many people are assessing that and collecting that data. And even just talking with people about food and how it comes into their lives in different areas can be really insightful. So we always start with just doing a lot of personal data collection. We're asking really comprehensive questions about
Sure.
nutrition and food and health overall. I think the other really important piece is clinically what's going on with you. From a functional medicine perspective, we're really looking at treating the root cause of disease, which is complex and multifaceted. So when I'm working with clients, thinking about, okay, you're coming in, you have high blood sugar, insulin resistance. What is the root cause of that? Well, of course, genetics plays a huge part in it, but we also know that physical inactivity increases insulin resistance. That's something that we want to focus on. We also know that eating a diet that's primarily composed of refined carbohydrates and added sugars can exacerbate insulin resistance. And so, like, really thinking about how we can adjust the lifestyle and the diet.
And then are you also doing blood work and looking at testing that way as well as your intakes and conversations or
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. So I live in New York State, and registered dietitians in New York legally can't order blood work, but we have a list of recommended labs that are nutrition related that we collect before we make any major recommendations around supplements. I think supplements can be really helpful. I personally have been on a handful of supplements. So I think
Sure.
it really comes down to like, what does the clinical data tell us? Like, what is your medical history? What is the big picture as far as your lifestyle, how you're eating, what you're eating, when you're eating? What do your labs say? Like, what is your current medical picture? and utilizing all of that information to really create like a personalized plan.
Sure.
And then that's where the hard part is. It's like, okay, so how do we work towards these goals one step at a time? What's important? Because, we can find out all this information, but if you're not ready to make these changes, or if you don't want to prioritize changing this aspect of your life, or you're just not there yet, then we sort of work on getting there from a behavior perspective.
Sure. Sure. Well, it's fascinating. And I love how multifaceted it is, because each of us is multifaceted. And to have this approach, it's just, there's so much more to it than going in, filling out a form, taking a blood test and being told, okay, this is going on. You need a prescription for this, see you in a year or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
have a good time with that or whatever. And I don't mean to be quite so snarky and cynical, but that is a big part of what's happening, at least in my experience and with many of my friends and family members. And just recently I found the most wonderful medical practitioner. She's an MD who also completely embraces Eastern medicine as well, and supplements and more functional medicine. And so it's been such a nice mix because of the way that she treats her patients and the way she treated me. Just, it was more like a going to see a friend, having a conversation about the things that you just mentioned, about what's going on with your choices and how is food showing up in your life, and are you doing the things that will help you feel better, and mixing that with her being a medical doctor as well. But that comes back to my point being, we're human beings doing the best we can in our situation, in our lives, sometimes getting to a point where we realize we can't do it on our own. We need the help that you offer. And I got to imagine that by the time somebody's walking in your door, they realize, okay, help me move through this, help me figure this out, because I am ready. And here I am. Let's go.
Yeah. When you're ready.
Yeah,
Right.
of course. Of course.
I think most of the people who come to see me, who come to see my dietitians, are ready because they've had a lifetime of frustration and they're ready to prioritize it. They know it's going to be challenging, it's going to be a process, but what they're doing isn't working. And that's like one of my favorite quotes, like, you can't keep doing the same thing and expect different results, right?
Yeah, right. And yet we
so
do.
powerful.
We bang our head against the wall over and over and over
Oh,
before we just like,
totally.
enough. Okay, here comes this cosmic 2x4. It's going to whack you in the head. Maybe that'll get your attention.
I love that analogy.
So let's talk about shifting health behaviors through positive psychology and neuroscience. Talk about that, because that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, so I think when it comes to our health, most people's experience with healthcare providers, and this isn't everyone, there are a ton of incredible healthcare providers out there, but I think a lot of people, at least the people who I've talked to, haven't really felt heard, or they felt that, like, they get these sort of blanket recommendations, like, you need to lose weight, or like,
Yeah.
I'm the expert and you need to change X, Y, and Z. And so I think when we look at things from positive psychology perspective, instead of saying like something's wrong with you, we need to change it, we're saying, okay, what is right with you? Like, what are you good at? And what are your goals? And how can we use your strengths in order for us to get to where you want to be?
Yeah. It just changes everything when you flip it around that way. And it's no longer a thank you next. Like, okay, here we are. How's it going? Da, 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 in and out. Just boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
No.
What's wrong with you? You're obese, you have type 2 diabetes, you're
Right.
vitamin D deficient, like yes, while some of this may be true, right, that isn't really helping to shift our behaviors at all.
No, it causes more fear, and it causes so many emotions to come up, and it causes shame, and it creates more suffering. And it's just much better to be able to say, okay, this is where we're at right now, but here are all the kinds of things that we can do to shift that with your strengths in mind, right?
Exactly. You nailed it, right? And it also it's about the client and like them feeling connected to their health. I think positive psychology really helps with that, supporting people and saying, why is this important to you? Like why is it
Hmm.
how can, your doctor said you need to lose weight in order for you to manage your diabetes. That feels like this really difficult thing to accomplish. So why don't we break that down and first start with, is this something that you want to do? Is it important for you to manage your health condition? Most people will say yes. And then why is it important? Because you want to be there for your family, because you want to have more energy. I have an 11-month-old baby girl, and
Mm.
it's really helpful for me to like self monitor my nutrition, specifically making sure that I'm eating like 3 meals. Because if I don't, 3 meals and a snack, because if I don't, I get so hungry and then I can't function.
Right. Sure.
So, like, that really motivates me to make sure that I'm grocery shopping every week, to make sure that I have snacks prepared, to make sure that I am batch cooking. Obviously, I have to feed my baby too, but really tapping into like what your motivators are, I think can be really empowering for people. And that's like a great example of the power of positive psychology, right? And I think that approaching health behavior changes that way can really help to support mindset shifts, which then inform changes in behavior change.
And so when somebody becomes your patient or your client, you set up specific goals for them and then they check in with you, or what does that look like after that? After you've partnered with somebody and you've gone through the intake and you've uncovered some areas that they can start to work on, then what?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's about, right, we start with readiness to change, right?
Yes, of course.
And
Readiness to change
motivation.
is first.
And then we collaborate on setting those goals and making a realistic plan that supports those goals. And that plan could include, education in order for people to find the motivation to change their behaviors. Maybe they just need a little more information about managing type 2 diabetes and the connection between that and carbohydrate intake, right? That plan could just be, okay, this week we're going to focus on learning more about your health condition and just tracking what you're eating as a way for us to identify some things that can support you on your health goals. Here are the specific goals that we set together. I will see you in a week and we will talk through these goals.
Okay, gotcha.
Not as
So it might be a weekly visit for a while.
Yeah, so typically we work with our clients either weekly or every other week at the beginning, and then over time we can spread those sessions out. The literature says that we see the most change in health markers from a behavioral perspective in the first 6 months. So we
Yeah,
really want to like capitalize on that motivation in the first 6 months of somebody changing their behavior or wanting to change their behavior. So
right.
more frequent follow-ups tends to be more fruitful.
Yeah, and I love that too, because then you're establishing trust and a longer term relationship. And then you know that somebody's in your corner. Tamara's in my corner. She's helping me work through this. And I'm going to be able to celebrate my wins and also be able to discuss the parts where maybe I fell off a little bit or fell short a little bit, and without making it a huge horrible thing, but with the understanding that, okay, so we get back on, and now what's the trigger for that, or what did you learn from that experience, so that you're more in the question, right, instead of telling somebody who they are and what they're all
Hmm.
about. Cool.
Exactly. You nailed it. I mean, it's just so important to have an ally in your health. There's so much to navigate from like a social, political perspective, from a medical perspective. It's difficult for people to be healthy this day and age.
Yeah, yeah.
It
I had
really
an
is.
experience, Tamar. I've been really mindful about my body and my nutrition and stuff for quite a while now, but it would ebb and flow, right? And so I was grocery shopping and I went to the store hungry, which I know better. And I also needed to get, I just was like, okay, what can I get that is still a good choice, but like I need to eat now or I'm going to like, I'm just ravenous by this point. So I shortened the trip and realized that my grocery bill was going to be twice as much because I was hungry, and what was I going to be putting in my cart? But also, I started looking at there were a few frozen meals to look at, right? I'm like, oh, I can
Hmm.
just do this, which it's not normally a thing, but again, I was really hungry and wanted something now. And I started to look at the pack. I started to read the backs of the boxes more closely than I ever have and realized, oh no, I don't, oh my goodness, just in this one tiny little meal that isn't even going to be that great. There's like 46 carbs, or there's even, who even knows how much salt or whatever. Just by simply looking at a few of those boxes, I was able to just snap out of it and go, okay, what do I know that I can do right now? What do I already have? And then I made a healthy choice and got out of there. Like, like I had to get out of there before doing something else. Before going back to the deli and saying, oh, I'll just have some chicken fingers or whatever. It was just a bizarre and cool thing where I really got to see how far I'd come. And so I bring that forward because that's something to celebrate when you realize, oh, I'm being mindful right now. As hungry as I am, I'm looking at this and I'm realizing the reward is not, it's not worth it. I would have been better off to get some ice cream or, some
Hmm.
ice milk or some coconut milk or, something like that. But I wasn't really in that mood, but I digress from there. But I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ultimate goal for a lot of people that I talk to is for them to feel like they're being intentional about their food choices,
Yes.
that they're making choices that support their health, their goals, their needs, as whether they're emotional needs or physical needs or a combination of both. They want to feel like it's an intentional choice.
Yeah.
You can have the ice cream and really enjoy it. And that feels empowering, right? You could also have a well balanced meal with protein, vegetables, and complex carbohydrates and really enjoy that. And that feels empowering. It's about like I think the intention. And that I think is what you really like highlighted in that story is you wanted to choose something that supported you in feeling really good. And if it was ice cream, then you would have felt really happy about it. But eating a frozen meal wouldn't really make you feel awesome.
Mm-mm.
So
Mm-mm. Well, and that's the thing too. I'm a really good cook. When you're in control of what's going into everything that you're making, and you're realizing how much cleaner your meals are when you're making them yourself. And even if you're not a cook like I am, believe me, you can find things to learn to make that are not really difficult. And
yeah,
by now there's a
totally.
million zillion videos to watch to teach you and things like that. But what I've learned is that it's the fewer ingredients, the better, the cleaner, the better, and it's more fun. I'm having a lot more fun with my food. I'm coming up on a year in March of primarily not having any animal protein and dairy. I'm not going to say 100%, but pretty close. And it's just amazing how I feel, how much better I feel all the way around. The biggest change, realizing how much I don't want any dairy. Like my body really doesn't want it. And I used to love cheese, and we had an experience where we had some pizza which we don't eat anymore really, and they put way too much cheese on it. And there would have been a time in my life where I'm like, yeah, extra cheese, right?
Bring it
I'm looking
on.
at this. And tomorrow I was so grossed out. Like I couldn't, I said, that's way too much cheese. Like that's crazy amount of cheese, right? Thought, wow, what a big change. What a change. My choices are so much healthier than they've ever been and coming up on a year. And it's still a challenge. It's still, oh, how can I make this easier? How can I make, because everything that's out there in front of you is, you have to dig for the good stuff. You have to know where to get that really wonderful salad that is made fresh by somebody else, or that wonderful wrap that's been thoughtfully prepared, that it's not full of all of the things that we don't want to put in our bodies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about, you said a few things that I think are important, right? Like it really comes back to the individual and knowing what works for you and that looks different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also changes for everyone over time. There were periods in my life where I was more plant based, and now I have incorporated more animal foods, and it makes me feel really good. And I have great energy. And if I'm more plant based, then I feel like I'm like really loading up on carbs, and that really impacts my energy. And so, like, I think experimenting with your body can be really hard. And I think also that's a good trigger to work with a professional too, right?
Yeah.
Knowing like, don't do it on your own. I've done it on my own, and it can be exhausting and overwhelming and tiring, and you end up trying a bunch of different things. And it's better to work with someone who can really guide you in that process and understanding how what you're eating connects with your symptoms, and really kind of talk you through like the nuances of food and health. And I think, like you said, it's been a year, and that process, it takes time. I think sometimes if maybe you feel better physically, but being restricting certain foods entirely can cause a big strain on your mental health, right? And like
Right.
that can do more harm than good from the picture of our health. So it's so important for us to just really be, tuned in to the subtle things. I think you're probably more tuned in than like the average person to
Yeah, I'm pretty
your needs.
I'm pretty tuned in, but I also had help. I did have help. And I failed to mention that in making that choice, because it was just there are knowings, there are intuitive things that come through for me, but then there's also checking with somebody like yourself, and in the beginning realizing, I have to be really careful of this now that I'm not doing this, like you said, with the carbs, and then, it probably really is good for me to have a little bit of animal protein, and then
Yeah,
to test that, and how does that feel, and then talk about it, and then, look at the tests and all that kind of good stuff. So yeah,
exactly.
it's very personal. And, one of the last things I want to talk to you about, and I know it's not your specialty, but I know you're aware of some pointers that you can share. Many of the women listening to This Sacred Life are experiencing perimenopause or menopause, moving through menopause. And with that can come a whole host of different symptoms in their bodies that change from day to day, kind of like, what's happening now? I'm wondering how a program like yours can help women who are trying to navigate through that, because it's already so much.
Yeah, I mean, certainly having someone to just, as I was saying earlier, having an expert who is experienced with certain symptoms and energy levels and how that relates to, your sleep, your movement, your nutrition, right? Like all of these things are intimately connecting. And so having that kind of all overseeing eye of someone who can say, well, you're fatigued because you're not eating enough. That feels like, oh, I'm having difficulty losing weight because I'm in perimenopause, right? And I need to
Right.
eat more. This doesn't make any sense, right? Maybe
Yeah.
it's just that we need to focus on, smaller, more frequent meals throughout the day, stabilizing our blood sugar by having protein with every single meal and snack, having 3 meals and 1 to 2 snacks, right? Balancing out your nutrition with exercise means so many women will exercise fasted or not eat until, 10, 11 because of work and family, and kind of like managing that whole dynamic. Adding in breakfast can have a huge impact on the rest of what we eat for the rest of on what we eat for the rest of the day, our energy levels, and therefore impact what we choose to eat. So I think it's really important to think about stabilizing energy when your hormones are changing. And we do that by manipulating our macronutrients, making sure we have protein and fiber.
I have a jar now that is mixed with chia, ground flax, and hemp seeds, and like equal a cup, and then I just like shake it up, and then put I don't know, a couple tablespoons in or whatever. And then
Mhm.
I get so happy looking at how much fiber I'm adding to, like,
Mm.
oh, how can I get more fiber in? That's and make it more of like a game, I guess, is why I bring that up. Like,
I love it.
because if I don't, I'll get bored, or and I'll go back to something else. But if I look at that and go, look at this, look at how easy it is for me to do this. This is an easy improvement here. Just this little thing.
Yeah, exactly. And fiber really helps with, so many aspects of our health. It helps us to feel full on less calories. So it helps with weight management. It supports gut health, which I know is something that can be more challenging as our hormones are shifting. Chia seeds have omega-3 fatty acids, which support, our anti-inflammatories. That supports our brain health. That supports our heart health. So we're getting like so many bangs for our buck when we're thinking about
Yeah.
food in the context of like other aspects of our health and not just weight loss. I think that's another big tip. Like, I think when you're
Yes.
going through perimenopause, you're so focused on the weight. How can I lose weight? I'm gaining weight. It's more difficult for me to lose weight. But if you shift your focus on, when I add in chia seeds, they offer all of these other benefits that at the end of the day are going to support weight management,
Yeah.
but are supporting our health and our body in different ways as well.
Right. Right. Well, I'm so glad you do the work that you do. And I know you worked really hard to get to where you're at and to become the co-founder of, and say the name of the company again, Culina, is it Culina?
Culina Health.
Culina. Okay. I keep wanting to destroy the name. That's big to be the co-founder there and to do the work that you're doing and all of the time and investment in your education and coming here today. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Shan. I appreciate it. It's just, I feel very grateful to be able to support people through your podcast, even if they're, not signing up with Culina, to just be able to listen to someone who, they can relate to and who knows what they're talking about when it comes to the
Yes,
science with
yes,
nutrition.
yes. Well, go ahead and tell our listeners how they can work with you, the best way to learn more and to come forward and maybe start a relationship.
If you're interested in working with one of our dietitians at Culina Health, you can go to culinahealth.com, and we actually offer free discovery calls. So you can book a discovery session with me or with one of our dietitians. We're in network with the most major insurance companies. Hop on a call with one of us, and we're happy to talk more about your journey with you.
Well, thank you again. I really appreciate you and all you do. And I know that a number of our listeners will be happy to reach out and learn more and take advantage of that discovery session.
Thank you, Shan. It's been so great connecting with you. And congrats on all of the work that you've done in your nutrition.
Oh, thank you so much. Learn more about Tamar Samuels and her supportive offerings, including a free discovery session, at culinahealth.com.